had a lot of people ask lately, where do I get my copper? I've also seen a lot of people, very hot, ask about these. And these come from microwaves. A lot of people think you're stupid to mess with them. The newer microwaves today do not have beryllium in them. So this is not beryllium. Although some people still claim that it is. This piece comes out of a microwave. This right here, piece right here. And this piece has 2 magnets, some aluminum cooling fins, and this magnetron right there. This is basically what creates the heat in your microwave. These little fins help cool that thing off when it gets hot. This is an amazing, amazing source of copper. And with a good, mine is kind of wore out, so I'm not showing you an example of a good one. But this is what you get on the inside. That's what it says inside of one of them things, which is really a nice little piece of copper. So what you want to do is, if you have a vise, put it on your vise, and I recommend putting it just about there so that you can run your Sawzall blade, and use a good Sawzall blade. Mine is completely wore out that I'm showing you this with, but yeah, use a good one. And if you have a good one, these things cut really easy, and it's a great source of electricity, of copper. And what I used to do with mine is I would throw these things, magnetron little thing, into my scrap pile, not realizing how valuable of a piece of metal it had in it. And I was looking for a sharper Sawzall blade, but I just don't have one. And even with a dull one, I'm going to show you. You can still get a nice nugget of copper out of that. And we will weigh this thing when I'm done. I'm trying to get it so it's just at the right level, so I'm not wasting any copper. And I can still cut that top off. That top, let me see. Yeah, see, that top is just a piece of steel. But that piece of steel is hiding a beautiful piece of copper. You put it on your vise. By all means, wear your safety goggles when doing this. Or be super careful, because you will get metal in your eyes if you're not careful. definitely want to have that nice and tight, or it'll do just like it did with me and fall off. So put it in there nice and tight. Sawzall blade works the best. Look at that. You're gonna have a couple pieces of steel in there to get rid of. But look at that beautiful thing. Look at that. So imagine that it's hot right now. You want to be careful. And let me see, I got a magnet in here, heavy duty magnet. Well, I guess I'm just going to use this one. I want to make sure all the steel is gone out of that, and it is. It is. It's too hot to handle, but that's a nice nugget that you'll get out of one of them things. If you want to cut them off, one thing that you can do is, if you want to, if it just scares you to death, excuse me, pretty copper. Looks like a little maze in there, I guess. Look at that. That is beautiful. It's too hot to touch. Now, I could have cut that off probably 3 times faster than I did, except for the fact that I had a very dull saw blade. But I just wanted to show you guys what's in these things as far as a source of copper. And that's a pretty good source, especially if you have a good sized container of them. And I actually have more than that. I got another jar of them down here. This is what it looks like before you take the aluminum off of it. Okay. So yeah, if you're worried about this, take a piece of tape and put it right around that, the ends there, or the end here. Let's see, I got a few more in this jar. Here, tape it, stick it in your vise, and you can get some really decent copper out of it. I don't think that these are dangerous anymore, as they're not. This is not an older microwave. I would not trust a older microwave, but look at the metal, pure copper inside of that thing. It's amazing. So that's one of my sources of copper. So where do I get the rest of my copper? So if you put that in a vise, you can get it pretty close where you won't leave much copper on there. And I didn't, mostly steel. Mostly steel. But so my source of copper, number one, these are a nice source of copper. And if you're afraid of it, because I know I'm going to have people tell me, oh, you don't want to do that, that thing will kill you. That's beryllium, and if you scratch that stuff, it will cause you cancer and all kinds of trouble. But yeah, be careful. I say be careful. Look at that one. It burnt slam out. So that one actually burnt up. So I don't know what the inside of that thing is going to look like, but I'll be finding out, because as soon as I get myself another saw blade, I'll be cutting some more of these things. So if anybody wants to know what's inside of one, there it is. There it is. I'm seeing some other metal down there. It looks white. It's too hot for me to grab a hold of. Let me set this camera up. Let's grab a hold of this thing. Grab a hold of this thing, guys. It's a really good source of copper. So you got your number one. And if I threw this in just like it was, it would be all number 2. 100%, all number 2 copper. But you see that soldering right there? If you cut it behind the soldering, and cut it, now you have a chunk of number 1 and a chunk of number 2. Could I get more number 1 off that? Sure could. put it back in your vise. Back in your vise. And you don't want to cut any, you do not want to cut into any of the soldering, because if it has solder on it, it's number 2 automatically. So this piece, I would throw that into my number 2 bin. Some people don't even bother with this little chunk. I actually do try to get all my number 1. And beautiful, beautiful. And then I got a number 1 piece. If it does have a little bit of soldering, you can always take a little sander and sand that little piece off. Oops, I just threw that into my number 2 bucket. Number 1. And another small piece of number 2. So that's another source of my copper. Another source would be possibly a piece of wire like this. Now, inside of this wire can sometimes be bare bright, but if it's not bare bright, let's see what we got here. It's going to be number 2. This is a solid piece of copper that's inside of there. Solid. Look at that. Take your wire stripper or knife if that's all you have. Now, this, because it's shiny, is what they would consider bare bright, which is better than number 1. It has to look like this though, guys. It has to look like that. If it doesn't look like that and it looks like this, you got bare bright, which is the most expensive copper, and then you got number 1. You notice it's not shiny orange. That would be number 1. Doesn't matter how big it is. Bare bright is only going to be a solid wire that you generally would get from your house wiring. So this was probably a ground wire that was run outside, so that is a nice piece of number 1. This is a nice piece of bare bright. What other kind of copper can you get? Okay, got another pipe right here. Now this pipe, if it has a lot of paint on it, unless you plan on sanding it off or something, you might as well just consider that number 2 copper, because if it has paint, they're going to put it right immediately into your number 2. So don't be putting your number 1 copper, or what you think is number 1 copper, in with your number 2 copper, because you'll be taking about a 15, maybe a 20-cent loss. My place doesn't mind if it has a little spots on it like that. That's really nothing major, as long as I get the soldering off. So I would throw that into my number 1. But a lot of my copper comes from pipes like this that people give me. Do you see all the patina on that? That patina is not paint. That is a natural thing that happens to copper, and as long as it's natural and it doesn't have soldering on it, guys, no soldering, that is going to be a number 1 piece of copper. So throw that in your number 1. Take something like this. This has a piece of brass on the end. You're going to have to get rid of that piece of brass. And also, I have learned that this piece right here, even though it has copper on it, can go into your clean brass pile, because copper is obviously better than brass. So I always, when I get pipes like this, I don't care if it has patina on it. Patina is beautiful. I love that green patina. Just make sure that when you cut it, you cut off any soldering. So there again, number 1. And something like this, I would just throw that whole thing into my number 2 pile and make that number 2 money. Wow, the whole end of that thing melted. So when it was in the microwave, apparently it really got hot. These things, again, they come from the microwave and they have a good nugget. Nice, beautiful nugget of copper inside of it. I already don't know what I did with my nugget, but what I do with these things, there you go. Old sheet aluminum. It comes off pretty easy. Definitely a good source of aluminum. These things are a good source of copper. So if you ever get one of these things, go ahead and take it apart. And if you're scared, if you feel like you don't know if it's an older or a newer microwave, you can always black tape, duct tape. I mean, duct tape's used for a lot of things, so you can always take, cover them things up with some duct tape. There it is, slide right off of there. So I would throw all this into my old sheet aluminum, which is right there. So that's another source of aluminum and also a great source of copper. What I do with them things a lot is I'll just take my cutters and cut that thing right there, cut it right there, grab it right there, and just peel that off. So that's one way you can get them off very easily. Throw that in your old sheet. So yeah, sources of aluminum, sources of copper, microwaves, air conditioners are all a good source. And a lot of people tell me that their yard does not accept these things here. They say they won't take microwaves because of this thing right here, that they just won't take them. Mine does. Like I said, they come from these. So if you got a microwave and you need some magnets, it's a real good source of magnets. There's always at least 2 of them in there. And one of these bad boys, which is beautiful source of #1 copper. One thing you can do with these things, since they're so pretty, is melt them. If you melt them down, you can pour stuff with it, just like Sculler did. Look what Sculler made for me. He took copper and poured this for me, scrapping with Grandpa. What's next? What's next? What's next? Sculler Metals. 999 fine copper, all stamped. 3 pounds, 2023 is when he poured it. Thank you, Sculler Metals, for that. And go check out Sculler's channel. He's an awesome dude. He sent me a shirt. He sent me these 2 pieces of metal. Yeah, so thank you, Sculler. But really all I wanted to just show you guys is some different sources of copper. What else do I got in here? Yeah, just a bunch of copper pipes. Now this is something that you might find on your water lines. On your water line, you're gonna have a little spigot thing here, and you're gonna take and cut that off, and what you'll end up with, these things right here, you turn that off right off, and that's gonna turn into clean brass right off the bat. But this here, you just take and put it in your vise. A vise is gonna be so handy. If you do not have a vise, you probably wanna think about buying a vise. And every time I cut a piece, I end up picking it up off the ground, which is probably a stupid idea. I might think about setting my vise back a little bit more. It does have a piece of tape on it. My yard, I'm not going to complain about that piece of tape. That piece there, I'll end up screwing that out and calling it